of you have asked the question, why don't they leave when learning about a domestic abuse victim? Can we just have a quick show of hands? Who's ever thought that? No judgment. Thank you. Although a victim may feel alone in their plight, these stats for year ending March 2019 suggest that 1.6 million women and 786,000 men experience domestic violence. In 75% of recorded domestic crime, the victim was female, and between March 2016 and March 2018, 74% of domestic homicides were female, compared to just 13% of non-domestic homicides. There's an awful lot of hurting people out there. Abuse thrives in silence. Shame and guilt, wrapped up in fear, paralyses victims. But the real shame is that the victim is blindly led on this roller coaster ride through what's known as the abuse cycle, where you're love bombed during the honeymoon phase, presents, promises, real knight in shining armour stuff. But as time goes by and your guard is dropped, tensions rise, bringing with it yelling, swearing, cutting criticisms, scathing comments. And then there's the explosive stage where sexual, physical, emotional threats and attacks are made until the abuser is satisfied that they've completely worn you down. Ghosting will be thrown in for good measure, and you're left wondering how on earth you could have provoked such outbursts. And of course you will be told that it's all your fault. And you believe that. Abusers rarely start a relationship with violence. It's a bit like the boiling frog syndrome, which I'm told has been outed as a myth, but for my purpose, the metaphor works. Disclaimer, no frogs were boiled while crafting this talk. So the boiling frog syndrome states that if you place a frog into boiling water, it will jump out. Yet, if you place it into tepid water and heat it slowly, it will ignore the gradually rising temperatures and boil to death. Coercion is very, very similar. It doesn't just rock up and smash you in the face. It's insidious, like tapeworms that slither into your gut and sit there undetected until your bowels are seriously compromised. Coercion seeps into your psyche, sucking away at your self-esteem and your intuition. You become blinded by your misjudgments until you can't see the wood for the trees, making you question your every movement, thought, motive, your very existence. And the sad thing is that society, there's this underlying myth that you must have done something. And so victims spend up to years treading relationship waters. And there's this philosophy that victims possess the self-efficacy to just march on out of a relationship that is unsafe, and that's not only untrue, it's detrimentally judgmental. Coercion is you're at the mercy of your abusers, and you feel like a mouse in a maze, hitting that brick wall, unable to escape. isolated, prone to coercion, forced to make sacrifices. So how do we reach those moments of clarity? How do we access moments of clarity when situations dictate that you're in this cycle of abuse? If you take a look at this simple circuit, you'll see a switch, a battery, and a light bulb. Now, just like a fire triangle requires oxygen, a fuel source, and heat to light a fire, all three elements are necessary to light the bulb. Lose one connection and the circuit breaks. Coercion is just the same. If we are constantly living in a cycle of abuse, then that trauma creates a disconnect between that abuse and your daily existence. Leaving you at the prey to your fear responses. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and flop. I alternated between fight and flop. At times I would come flying out of my metaphorical corner, gloves held high, giving it everything that I had. But as time went on and the exhaustion took over, I would flop. What was the point? I could never win because I was playing a game where the rules were made up by somebody else as we went along. I lived a life of inner turmoil whilst taking children to schools and nurseries and childminders, swimming lessons, dancing, acting, singing, choir rehearsals, Cubs, Scouts, Beavers. I joined PTAs, I sat on committees, I served in my church, and yet nobody knew my dirty secret. To the outside world, I had a lovely life, yet I could feel that life draining from me daily and felt helpless to stop it. My overloaded circuit, my overloaded, disconnected circuit broke until my moment of clarity. Until witnessing my daughter jumping in front of us while screaming at her father, "You will not treat my mother this way." I beat a hasty retreat and went on a quest to find out why I attracted men who obviously hated me with a passion, whilst telling me that I was the love of their life and the only one for them. Indeed. I'm sharing this with you today because this is typical of so many abusive relationships. Abuse transcends gender, race, class, religion. I never expected to be a victim. It certainly wasn't on my vision board. I loved these men, and these men confessed undying love to me one day, and held me up by my throat the next, or threw me against a wall. Or after coming home from a wonderful event, spirits high, the spirit would take over, and I would be faced with a barrage of abuse until they fell asleep and expected to resume normal duties the next day. And if I deigned to question these sometimes drunken outbursts, I was called a liar and ghosted for up to weeks on end. At this point, I would like you to think about What fear response is your go-to? When you feel fear, what behaviour shows up for you? We all have the ability to create parallel circuits to help others and to be able to touch others, transmitting love, compassion, empathy, and so much more, just by being available and making ourselves, a conduit for hope. A smile, a hutch. For the non-Welsh, that's a hug. A listening ear, a handshake is all that's needed to make a difference in someone's life and spark a revolution of survivors, leaving the guilt and the shame of abuse behind, creating a pathway to a clearer mind and a brighter future for them, their families, their communities, their world. I'd like to close with a poem I wrote, and it's a potted version of my journey through domestic violence to my moment of clarity, called Mighty Oaks. Mighty oaks from Little Acorn Farm. That's what he said. And the robins, larks and butterflies flew around in my head. The mix of endorphins and enzymes coursed through my veins. They veiled my eyes and befuddled my brain till intuition packed her bags and left. So I was left, bereft, to continually reposition my boundary fences, staking them loosely with all the red flags that once gathered so proudly in the glass vase that sat quietly on the sunny windowsill of my heart. Those same red flags that now lurked and camped in the deepest, darkest corners of my unknowing. Protected by smoke and mirrors and possessive weeds, snarling and strangling the lifeblood from my bruised mind, bleeding heart, battered soul. Holding those memories so close, the lights burned and flashed in my eyes till no light could transmit inside, and so the darkness took hold. And with each unfolding curse that was boldly told and consecrated by each tormented instance, pushing me to the edge of my existence, so close I almost jumped, clutching the remnants of my self-esteem and the shards of glass in that vase that had finally shattered under the pain and strain of years of hatred poured into my soul through the open cracks in my heart. So young, so whole, so innocent. Like the innocence of my children, the little girl within and the babies without. I followed the voices that called to me, those whispers that said, come, bring your babies, you'll see, we'll take you to a much better place, where the tears will be wiped from your face, where you cry no more, no pain, no trace of this ugly, miserable and pernicious existence that has caused you to question and ponder each instance of accusation and fiery dart from the flaming tongue that has seared your mind and your heart, branding you as incomplete, not enough, useless. Fill in the bleep. But God picked me up and washed me down, exchanged my cloak of darkness for a gown and a crown. He reminded me of my superpower, that I am his, made in his image, beautiful, regal, and get this, he gave me a plan, a purpose and a position, so never again will I reach a situation of forgetting that I am his seed that's grown into this mighty oak tree, standing tall and reaching up high to the light that now orders my steps and guides my life to make a positive imprint wherever I tread, transmitting his light to those who are lost, helping them to dust off the dross of a life spent in submission to pain, to feel the beauty of life and to live again. So now I am planting my seeds and watching my mighty oak trees grow. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.